don't usually take cabs. Not anymore. Not in a city like this, where rideshare apps have practically replaced them, and half the yellow ones left are falling apart, or driven by guys who don't even speak. But that night was different. I'd had one too many bourbons at a bar on Greystone Avenue. My phone was dead, and for some reason, walking home in the cold felt like a death sentence. That's when I saw it. A cab, almost like it had been waiting for me. It rolled up without a sound. The yellow paint was faded, like it had sat under the sun for years. The rearview mirror hung limp on a frayed wire, and a line of dusty black tassels hung from the dash. I remember hesitating, just for a second, but the cold bit deep, and the buzz in my head told me to get in. So I did, and the door closed behind me without a sound. The driver didn't say a word, just gave me one slow nod and pulled away from the curb. His face was half in shadow, barely visible in the mirror, but what I could see looked wrong. Pale, sweaty. His hands trembled slightly on the wheel, and his eyes kept flickering like he couldn't focus on the road. I figured he was just tired, overworked, maybe high. We were heading toward the Old City Bridge, a long, rusted stretch that most locals avoided after dark. It creaks when you drive across it, like it's groaning under your weight. About halfway across, without warning, the cab just stopped. I leaned forward. "Everything okay?" I asked. No answer. The engine idled. Headlights lit the empty stretch ahead. Behind us, a line of cars started to build, honking, flashing. Still, the driver didn't move. Instead, he started rubbing his thighs, hard, like he was trying to warm up or fight off some invisible pain. He was panting, whispering something under his breath I couldn't understand. And then, without turning to me, he hit the gas so suddenly it threw me back in my seat. We flew off the bridge like a rocket. He dropped me off a block from my apartment. No apology, no words. Just stopped, unlocked the doors, and stared straight ahead. I got out, heart still racing, and watched the cab disappear down the street. For a second, I thought I saw him glance back in the mirror and smile. I tried to forget about it. Strange drivers happen. But the next morning, scrolling through local news, my blood turned cold. There it was. Near-fatal incident on Greystone Bridge. Another passenger had reported a cab driver who stopped mid-bridge, whispering and twitching, then took off like a maniac. But here's the thing. The report was time-stamped 2 nights before I took that ride. It didn't make sense. How could it be the same cab? Same description, same driver's behavior, same bridge. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I'd mixed up the date. Maybe I was drunker than I remembered. But when I stepped outside for coffee, I saw it again. That same cab, parked across the street, engine off, empty. It vanished before I could even blink. That night I heard tires screeching at 2:03 a.m. Exactly. I remember because I looked at the clock. When I peeked out the window, there were no cars in sight, just fresh skid marks at the corner. No one else heard a thing. I started asking around. My friend Sam, a guy who collects stories about local legends, got way too interested. I told him about the cab, the bridge, the dreams I started having. Always me in the back seat, the same ride. But this time the driver didn't stop at the bridge. He jumped it. Every night I woke up before we hit the water. Sam said it sounded familiar. He dug around and found something, an urban legend. Back in 1994, a cab went off that same bridge. The driver had a seizure, or maybe something else. He survived. His 3 passengers didn't. The story got buried in a few newspapers. No follow-ups. The driver disappeared from the hospital. Some say he walked out and was never seen again. Others think he never left. That's when the dots started connecting. The tassels, the cracked mirror, the same cab, still driving 30 years later. looking for new passengers. But that wasn't the worst part. The dreams started to change. Now I was outside the cab, watching it pull away, watching myself in the back seat. I tried to scream, to chase it, but I couldn't move. The cab would vanish into the night, tires screeching, headlights flickering like they were underwater. Then Sam went missing. He joked about summoning the ghost cab, said he'd stand on the bridge at 2 a.m. and wave it down, just for fun. The last message he sent me was a blurry photo of the cab, taken from the bridge. The taillights were barely visible through the fog. He hasn't been seen since. I went to his apartment. His laptop was still open. Google searches: Greystone Bridge accident, 1994 cab crash, ghost taxi urban legend. No sign of a struggle. It was like he just vanished into the night. Then came the emails, sent from my account, to people I hadn't spoken to in years. Each one had the same subject line: "He's still driving." I never typed them. I never hit send. But they were there, in my outbox. And then, the photo. A Polaroid, slipped under my door. It was of me, sleeping. From inside my apartment, curtains closed, lights off, shot from the corner of the room where I keep an old, broken lamp. I don't even own a Polaroid camera. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner, holding a kitchen knife, eyes glued to the hallway. Around 3:17 a.m., I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy ones, wet ones, like someone dragging soaked shoes across old carpet. When I looked out the window the next morning, there were tire marks, leading away from my building. No oil drips, no debris, just perfect black streaks curving into nothing. I've stopped going outside after dark. I unplugged my doorbell. I don't answer knocks unless I know who it is. But the cab still shows up, parked across the street or down the block. Sometimes just out of sight, but close enough that I feel it there, waiting. And the dreams. They've stopped being dreams. Now I see him when I'm awake, a figure behind the wheel, pale face, twisting slowly. Eyes like broken glass. He never speaks, but his lips move. And I know exactly what he's saying. Get in. So if you're watching this, if you've ever taken a cab across Greystone Bridge, or plan to, remember this: he doesn't pick just anyone. He picks the ones who notice, the ones who look too long, the ones who feel something is wrong but ignore it. Don't ignore it. Don't look back. And if you ever open your door to find a Polaroid on the floor, you're already in the back seat. Story number 2. I used to drive taxis late at night, mainly in the quieter outskirts of Kanagawa, away from the flashing neon signs and endless chaos of downtown Tokyo. I liked it that way. Something about the emptiness helped me think. No passengers yelling over the music, no drunks making a mess in the back seat. Just the low hum of the engine and the occasional soft crackle of the dispatch radio. People always ask if it gets lonely working nights. And yeah, it does. But sometimes, it's better than being home. My wife passed away a few years ago, and my teenage daughter Yumi barely talked to me anymore. Most nights, she was either out or locked in her room with her headphones on. So I stayed out late. Driving helped me pretend I was doing something useful, paying the bills, holding it all together. That night started off like any other. Around 1:30 a.m., I just dropped off a couple of tipsy office workers near a small karaoke bar. They laughed all the way through the ride, and for a second, I almost felt normal, like life still had pieces of joy hidden in it. Just as I was considering heading home, the dispatch radio crackled. Pickup request, residential, outskirts of Hayakawa. Confirm? I hesitated. That road was rural, near the tree line, isolated, but money's money. I hit the confirm button, turned off the jazz playing softly on the radio, and started toward the pickup spot. It was deep in a quiet residential area, barely lit, the kind of place where every house looked abandoned after midnight. Street lamps were spaced too far apart, and there was a dampness to the air that made my fingers itch on the steering wheel. And that's when I saw her, standing alone under a flickering street lamp. Long white dress, hair dark and long, completely covering her face. She wasn't holding a phone, didn't glance around. Just stood there, perfectly still, like she'd been waiting a long time. I almost didn't stop. My stomach dropped the moment I saw her, but I pulled over anyway. It's part of the job, right? She got in without a word, just quietly slid into the back seat. The weight of her presence felt heavy. The air suddenly grew colder, like the heat had been sucked out the moment the door closed. "Where to, ma'am?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. A long pause. Then, almost like a breath carried on wind, she whispered, "Take me to the station." The station? At 2 a.m.? I glanced at her in the mirror. Couldn't see much, just the white fabric of her dress and the curtain of black hair draped over her face. Still, I nodded, turned on the meter, started driving. The roads were silent. No cars, no animals. Just the occasional rustle of trees as the breeze moved through the forest that flanked either side of the road. A few minutes passed and something began to gnaw at me. There was no sound coming from the back seat. No breath, no shifting. Not even the faint creak of the seat cushion. I peeked at the rearview mirror again. She wasn't there. The seat was empty. I slammed on the brakes so hard the car skidded slightly, fishtailing before stopping in the middle of the road. My heart pounded like a drum. I turned around, fully expecting to see her slumped over, or maybe leaning to one side. But the back seat was completely empty. The door hadn't opened. The lock hadn't clicked. Nothing. I jumped out, scanned the area with my flashlight app. Checked under the car. Behind nearby trees, nothing. But the air smelled wrong, like damp earth and wilted flowers, funeral flowers. I got back in the cab, more shaken than I'd ever been in my life, and that's when I saw it. A red coin purse, traditional, embroidered, worn along the edges like it had been used daily for years. I don't remember picking up anyone else that night. No one could have dropped it. Inside the purse was a folded piece of paper, yellowed from age. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. A train ticket, dated April 17th, 1978, stamped for Hayakawa Station. The next morning, I told another driver about it. One of the older guys, Mr. Tanaka, who'd been driving since the 80s. He froze, didn't blink, didn't smile. "You picked her up?" he whispered. "Who?" I asked. He leaned in, lowered his voice. "There's a story, local legend, about a woman who died on her wedding day. Struck by a delivery truck while walking to Hayakawa Station. They buried her in her wedding dress, but she never made it to the altar. Every few years, someone claims to pick up a woman in white, hair over her face, doesn't speak much, disappears mid-ride." I laughed nervously, hoping he'd crack a smile. He didn't. He looked at me and said, "I've never taken a call from that area, and I never will." That week, strange things started happening. My daughter saw someone staring at our house from the woods. Lights in the hallway flickered, even when they were off. But the worst part? She started dreaming about a woman in white, always outside her window, never knocking, just standing there, waiting. So I started digging. Library archives, old newspaper clippings. I found her name, Haruka Tanabe. Engaged to a young railway officer. She left home in a white dress, on foot, to meet him at Hayakawa Station. But she never arrived, hit by a truck just minutes from the station. Her body was discovered hours later, face down in the rain. The fiancé gone, vanished. No one knows if he ran off in guilt, or if something took him. The rumor? She still waits for her ride, desperate to finish her journey. One night, I went back. Same street, same flickering light. I wanted to know if it was real, if it had been some twisted dream, or if she was still out there. I waited. Engine off. No music. Just the ticking of the cooling metal and my own shallow breath. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. Then I heard it. The soft click of the rear door. I hadn't touched it. I turned around. Empty. But in the mirror, I saw her, pale, wet, eyes wide open but blank. A smile beginning to form, slow, stretched, unnatural. And then, darkness. I woke up the next morning behind the wheel, parked in a different part of town. No memory of the drive, no recollection of getting there. Since then, she's followed me, not always visibly, but in reflections, on dark screens, in whispered static on the radio when it's tuned to dead stations. Sometimes I hear her voice, just once, always the same words. Take me to the station. I sold the taxi, tried to move on. But now, something new is happening. My daughter Yumi came home last night. She told me she saw a woman standing outside her bus stop. White dress, hair covering her face. She smiled. I'm terrified. Because this story didn't end with me, and I don't think it ever will. Some passengers never really leave. And if you're ever out late, driving through quiet streets, and a woman in white flags you down, don't stop. No matter how cold it gets, no matter how lost she looks, because once she gets in, she never really leaves. And the next time she needs a ride, it might be you.